The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and I've got my thing on the wrong view. There we go. We're coming to you live. I'm in my house and I've got Dr. Doreen Grampichet here with us and she's in her house. We're observing that social distancing, but still here with you, hopefully in your house, to bring you some really wonderful information and hope and inspiration, I hope. We are going to be with you live for the next hour. I should say that this is Welcome to Autism Live, the morning edition, because right now, for this week and this week only, we are doing a morning edition and we are doing an afternoon edition. And I got to tell you that the afternoon edition has been so inspirational to me. It's just knocking my socks off every afternoon. That is happening at 2 o'clock Pacific time, which is actually 5 p.m. Eastern time. And it's a wonderful edition that's with Dr. Grampichet every day. In the morning show, you only get Dr. Grampichet on Wednesdays, and it is Wednesday, so you're getting double fabulous today. But she's with me every afternoon at 2, and I'm going to let her tell you what we're doing then because it's really remarkable. Dr. Grampichet?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Shannon. Yeah, so our 2 o'clock show is very exciting because we are honoring our heroes at CARD, and we would love for all of our viewers to join us because truly it is one of our more, I guess, emotional shows because a lot of the folks who come on the show and we get a chance to interview them and talk to them a little bit about how they're experiencing this period of time in our lives and how they're coping and how they're continuing to help others. And so we are shining a light on these amazing heroes, and we'd love to share that with all of you. But Shannon, I also want to say that if there are CARD families joining us right now on our show right now, I am doing a kind of private Ask Dr. Doreen for just CARD families every day this week at noon. Yes. That's just because we have so many people asking questions and needing some guidance and advice that we ended up doing an extra show for everyone.
Yes, and if you are a CARD family, check your email because the code for that webinar, it's a private code and it's been emailed to you. So check your email and find that so that you can join us. Now, for the rest of the world, you're here on Wednesday, and it is the day when you get to do that as well, which is super fabulous for you. And Dr. Grampichet is here, as you can see. Usually, we hide her off camera for a couple of minutes. We're not hiding anything anymore. That's what COVID has done for us. Everything's out in the open. So she's here. She's going to be answering your questions. If you watch the show, there are lots of different ways that you can connect, lots of different ways that you can let us know your thoughts, your feelings, and your questions. Now, I have pages and pages of questions that we are still trying to answer from last week and earlier this week. And some that there was one in particular that was asked during our CARD Hero segment yesterday in the afternoon version of Autism Live. And I promised them that we would hit that first this morning, and I want to honor that promise. But for all of you, please write in. I take preference over live questions and try to answer as many as possible. Please, though, be patient. I'm trying to, go back and answer as many as I can online. But we are, we're behind, and I'm just going to be honest about that. But the question that we had live yesterday during the afternoon show was, it's really hard to cope with this quarantine COVID-19. And they refer to their son is keeping us on our feet. It's a big challenge. having to look after my 8-year-old son. He's extremely hyper, not aware of danger. Today, he went out of the garden with his scooter to the main road, had a lucky escape. Is there a medication to keep my little boy calm, less hyper? And they want you to know, Dr. Granpeesheh, he's nonverbal, and they're thinking about getting a GPS tracker. And of course, we're fans of the big tracker, but the preference is to not have to get to the point where we're looking for them with the tracker, right, Dr. Granpeesheh?
Yeah, absolutely, of course. And so there are a few things you can do, but the tracker is also a good idea also because it will give you a little bit of peace of mind. And right now we all need just as much peace of mind as we can get. So there's many things. One is, the first thing I would do, honestly, is I would put up some sort of barrier. So if there's no fencing or if there is access where he can get out, please deal with that first. Safety is always the primary area of focus. And I would really, really urge you to make sure that the backyard or wherever he is running around, just like we do with our infants when they're born, we go ahead and make the house safe. That's my first thing, is please do whatever you can to put a barrier up so that he is not able to run away. The second thing is, yes, there are medications, obviously, that you can have your psychiatrist. You can start with your pediatrician, maybe have a conversation. This is a good time, actually, to have that conversation, because a lot of these evaluations can be done with you answering a questionnaire to identify if he has symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity. And if he does have some of those hyperactive symptoms and they're unmanageable right now, it might be the right time to try some medications that will help calm him. All that aside, and the GPS tracker, as I said, is a good idea to give you some peace of mind. But all that aside, from a behavioral perspective, there's a lot of stuff you can do. And it's very difficult, I think, for parents. Like, I don't want to be unfair and just say, you're going to do the following things to deal with it. Because yes, there's a million other things you're dealing with right now as well. So what I would suggest, whatever is feasible for you. Let's start with that. A lot of payers right now have given funding for in-home telehealth, in-home therapy, as well as for telehealth therapy. And I would really recommend, if you do have an ABA provider, that you contact them, ask them if they have funding for you to do this, and work with your BCBA, as well as your BTs, your behavior technicians, to handle this situation. Elopement is a very big and important issue, and pretty much everyone will fund it. So that's that. If you don't, then I would recommend that if you're just on your own right now, I would recommend the first thing you should do is set up some sort of routine for your child that and make sure that a lot of the activities are physical activities in the routine that will literally exhaust him. That's pretty much all you can do right now. So if there's an opportunity, if there's a trampoline in the house, maybe that's part of the routine. If there isn't, maybe jumping on a bed is part of the routine. Actually, like just doing calisthenics. If you can set up an obstacle course in the background, anything, jumping rope, kicking a ball back and forth, whatever you can do that is a routine that he gets into, it'll be helpful. And during that time, if it's possible for you, if someone's watching him and it's possible for you, I just want to recommend that you start using that time to learn some of the behavioral techniques that will help you in the long run. And of course, those are available to all of our viewers on, excuse me, on IBT's website, Institute for Behavioral Training. Did you want to ask?
A great point. And I want to say, the folks at IBT asked me to be telling all of you every day, there is a free training every single day of the week that they are posting on their site, ibehavioraltraining.com, just for parents, during this emergency that are tailored just towards the kinds of things that are coming up because you're in a stay-at-home situation. So those are there for you. Those are free. There are additional trainings that you can pay for that are very affordable. You know, I think they start at $7.50, so it's cheaper than even buying a softcover book. And it's videos by top-notch people that help you to learn things. And I also want to point out that on their website, they have 3 different sets of videos. They have, and basically it's teaching all of the same things, but at different levels. And it really is a measure of how much jargon you can handle. So what I love about it though, is that you can start with the parent videos. And if you find, okay, but I want to know more about that, you can learn more about it. You can go to the professional and take the same videos that professionals do to train themselves. And in between, there's the teacher ones that deal just with things in the classroom, which may be of help to you right now, as so many of you are having to be teacher and OT and whatever. And side note, when Dr. Grampiche started answering this question and she talked about shoring things up so that, you know, that they can't get out with any ease, I just want to remind everybody that hardware stores are delivering. That they are considered one of the essential businesses. If there are locks and alarms that you need to install, most hardware stores are delivering right now. You don't even have to leave your home. You can go online, you can order things. Please, let's be safe. It is the time of year where normally we are talking about this all the time on Autism Live. And, you know, I hate scaring people and I hate being negative, but let's be honest. The number 1 cause of death for individuals on the autism spectrum is drowning due to elopement. And the number 2 is being hit by a car due to elopement. And let's not have that be our stories. Take every precaution that you can, shore that place up, learn what you can, because we want everybody to be as safe as possible. Okay, and I wanted to bring up, we had somebody write in, and it's not even a question, but it was a comment, and it's a heartbreaking comment. And of course, my computer hates me right now. It's because I have 17 windows open. All right. But a nurse wrote this in to us last week, and I wanted to put it out there and have Dr. Grampiche comment, because of course we're also deeply grateful for first responders. And, you know, we are taking an hour every day to talk about how grateful we are for the people who are still working with our kiddos. And this is a nurse. I don't want to leave her out. She says, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm a nurse. I work 2 nights a week. I have an almost 5-year-old with autism. I'm doing his ABA program with the help of his BCBA. I'm also doing his speech and OT. I'm also helping my 12-year-old neurotypical with e-learning. I just want to cry. I won't quit, but I'm struggling so much right now. And I just wanted to shout into the void, and I don't even know if she's watching today, but to say, you know, you're a hero. And, you know, when we all think about all the things that we have going on, and then to be a nurse on top of that and be leaving your home 2 nights a week to be able to take care of other people, you're a remarkable human being. I know for me, and I'm going to let Dr. Grampiche comment. I've been racking my brain, like, what can I do to help you? And let me just say this, you know, please write to me if I can, you know, 1 hour a day, help out with doing something with your 12-year-old. I'm not the best tutor, but there are some, I'm an ex-teacher. There are some things. If you want me to be hanging with your 12-year-old for a little while every day, I will do that for you. So write to me if you're watching, and just putting it out into the universe. Bless this woman and all that she's going through. Dr. Grampiche?
I'll just add to that, Shannon. I guess I'll just say, you know, sometimes and it sounds to me, excuse me, I think I'm losing my voice from doing so many meetings.
Yes.
But, sometimes we just are doers, right? I mean, you are, I am, Shannon, and it sounds like this parent is as well. And we end up doing so much that we just forget. I guess it's not one of our habits to ask for help. And so what I would recommend is, if you have friends or anyone else that you can lean on right now, it's a very tough time, because I know nobody wants to like enter the home, or, you know, and God willing, we're about to hit the peak and then we'll start going, things will become easier again. But if you do have anyone that you could ask for help, ask for help. there's no weakness in asking for help. Honestly, given your circumstances, anyone would need some support and help. And so I'm also very sorry that we're not able to help you. I wish there was something we could do. I guess the only thing I can tell you is that I read a lot of scientific projections about what's going on with COVID-19, and there's a lot of hospital research that it has indicated that this is very much like a normal curve, and we're about to hit the peak of it early next week. And if we hit the peak of it early next week, or like around somewhere between the 11th to the 15th of April, then hopefully if all of those are accurate, things will start getting better after that. So I'm holding on to that, and I'm holding on to just the hope that life will start to get easier again in the middle of May. So I just want to give you that hope as well, and hope that you're able to cope through it.
Thank you so much. And I also, a comment that we'd gotten the other day that we hadn't had a chance to get to, but I see that person is watching right now. They wanted to know, does anyone know a way for a teenager who has not been evaluated yet to still be evaluated for autism if their state is under a stay-at-home order? Is there a way right now to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I were to evaluate a teenager right now, I would do an interview with you, the parent, and I would send you a series of assessments that are questionnaires. And then I would want to see the adolescent on camera. If they are verbal, I'd want to talk to them. Otherwise, I would ask you as the parent to try to interact so that I could see some things. But certainly it's possible to do an evaluation right now. We at CARD have actually, unbelievably, we have just as many admissions occurring right now as we did before the virus, which is incredible. And our admissions involves all of the above. It involves assessment, evaluation, observation, questionnaires, all kinds of stuff.
Wonderful. I just want to take a second to acknowledge the people that are have written in, who are watching. And I was saying before we came on the air that today is my dad's birthday. He would have been 83 years old. And early on in my dad's career, he was in the field of television. He was a sound person early on. And in Boston, one of his first jobs after leaving the military was he was the sound engineer for Romper Room. And on Romper Room, there's a point when the woman says, "Mr. Music, please." And my dad was Mr. Music, so, which was super fun. But there was a point in Romper Room where she would hold up a little mirror and she would say, "I see Bobby and I see Joey." So in honor of my dad in Romper Room, I'm just going to say, "I see Raven and I see Christina and I see Critter Kid and I see My Non-Traditional Life and I see Jeremy." And if you guys want me to acknowledge you, write in right now and I'll say your first name or whatever, like Romper Room, which is extra fun for me. Okay, question that we have coming in. Do you have any advice for a 2-year-old that was eating good, but in the last few months, he's really become very picky? He's a sensory kid, according to his OT. And I imagine that with all of this COVID stuff, if a kid was picky before, it's going to be that much harder when you're having issues ordering groceries.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about the fact that groceries are probably a little bit more restricted. I don't know. I can't tell from the question whether or not the pickiness has increased just as kind of in correlation to COVID, but it is very common for our kids to gradually become more picky. And it's funny, Shannon, because we were just talking about this yesterday. I think the whole concept of food selectivity and how it develops in kids. So maybe I'll talk about that for a minute real quickly. With us, as when we go out and eat something that bothers us in some way or another, like let's say it causes gastrointestinal inflammation or something, we tend to think about the ingredients of the food that we ate and what ingredient would have caused me to have whatever, bloating or pain or whatever it is. And then we try to avoid that ingredient going forward, right? With children, so like, for instance, I could say, oh, I've come to realize that every time I eat something that has peanuts in it, I react really badly. Maybe I'm allergic to peanuts, that kind of thing. But with children, they don't have the ability to identify the ingredients. All they can identify is the color or the smell or the crunchiness, softness, the texture. And so they start to overgeneralize based on that. So for instance, with your child, what's happening is that possibly he had some other food that was mushy. And I'm guessing, because a lot of our kids just want crunchy foods, but it could also be that your child just wants mushy foods, which is a different issue, by the way. And maybe you can write in and tell us about that. But it is an overgeneralization of something that caused them some dislike or some other problem at some previous point. I would take it very much to mean, first of all.
And she said, by the way, she says mushy, that they only like mushy stuff.
Okay, great. I'm so glad that we're live and you could tell me that. Because when the issue is mushy, this actually becomes a really, really good red flag for you. So yes, on the one hand, I would want you to work on that, and you can work on that by requiring a small bite of something not mushy. Let's say it doesn't have to be crunchy, it just has to be chewy. And then giving multiple items that are mushy. In other words, you start with, let's say you have a bowl of oatmeal, okay, or something that the child likes, pudding, right? And you require the child to eat one piece of, let's say, bread or something that is not mushy, one piece, and then they can have the bowl of the mushy food, right? And then tomorrow they have to have 2 bites of the item that's not mushy, and then they will get the rest of the stuff, right? So you gradually increase the requirement of non-mushy foods that way. Now, and you reward the child significantly, massively. You throw a party when they have a bite of the non-mushy food. What's very important as you're doing this is a feeding program. What's really important though is, aside from all that, what's really important is that most of the time when our kids prefer mushy foods, this is an indication that their tongue is not moving around enough. They're not able to make chewing an action movement of the mouth, which actually is apraxia, and it will lead to language delay. So it is very important that you actually start doing some stuff that kind of mobilizes all of the inside of the mouth. And those types of things include getting your child a vibrating toothbrush so that they can put that in their mouth and activate everything that's in there. Doing a lot of exercises that help the child move their tongue around. Just think about when you're talking or eating, how many different ways your tongue moves, right? And our kids generally have a hard time with that. And so it would be very good if you could help do those exercises, like just sticking your tongue out, moving it up, down, to the side, left, right. You can use like a lollipop to try to guide the child, because their tongue will move to the lollipop. In fact, if you go on skills, I believe we have there's a section called oral motor exercises, and you should be doing a lot of those. That also will help.
Yeah. It's and skills. And by the way, somebody asked for the IBT, so I'm going to give you both of these at the same time. So the place where you got the trainings, Katie, you were, and by the way, I see Katie, you were asking about. So that's ibehavioraltraining.com, ibehavioraltraining.com. And maybe Traven, if you can type that in on Facebook, so that, or YouTube, wherever Katie has asked that, because I can't discern that from here, so that they can see it there. But ibehavioraltraining.com. Now skills is at skillsforautism.com, and you can go there, do a trial. But there's a whole section that's on motor skills, And in motor, there are oral motor skills and there are physical motor skills, right? Gross motor skill and fine motor skills. But there's also visual motor, which I find that a lot of our people are really excited to get to. So really good stuff. Okay, so hopefully we have addressed that. I've got questions every which way here, but I want to go to one that I think is everybody's dealing with right now, Dr. Grant-Boucher. I cannot seem to get my 10-year-old away from his iPad, his computer, and his phone. How do I try to take away so much dependency on technology, especially in this moment in time? Which I think is the question, right? For everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what you need to do is, so there's, I guess I have two perspectives on this. One is, let's choose our battles right now. So if it was any other condition where, you know, right now we're 100% dependent, all of our communication, whether it's just social communication or it's academic or anything else, does require a computer or an iPad, right? And a phone. So it's sort of, it's a very difficult thing to cut that off or reduce it significantly during this time. If it was any other time, I would say, yes, you need to start restricting some of those things. But right now, you still can restrict them for sure. But I think you just, you limit them less than you would at any given other time. So I would first of all, not worry so much about it, because all behavior we can change behavior later as well. But I would just make sure that if he's on his iPad, computer, or phone, in between, there's physical exercise, which is very important. And that, like, you just have to mandate that. You basically have to say, if you want your iPad, I need you to go and, you know, run back and forth 20 times or whatever it is that you want him to do. Require some physical activity. Maybe require a small amount of other types of things, like maybe, you know, you can't have the iPad or computer when it's meal times. And I talk to a lot of parents, and right now is the best time for everyone to start, like, kind of going back to the traditional family type of environment where we all eat together and have eye contact and socialize and all those good things that we had lost due to all the crazy competition and activity and speed of life. Yeah. So, you know, but then again, when he's on his iPad, computer, and phone, I would just make sure that you're comfortable with what he's on. So that becomes a different issue. And it's kind of like, when he's on these social media, is he on the appropriate sites that you want him? Lock those features so that he's not able to access things that you don't want him to access. And I think that's the best you can do right now. Honestly, our world has changed, and I don't know how much it'll change back. This is the interesting thing, because if you look at the young generation right now, a lot of their social behavior was always on computers, has been forever. Gaming industry is on computer. It's all on computers, right? So whether or not we'll go back to the way it was when we were kids, I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I think the more we realize our capabilities through things like Zoom, for instance, the more people become comfortable with socializing even in this modality. So, you know, you can restrict it just as long as there's other healthy things that are in the schedule, but I would also be lenient about it.
There you go. I do want to point out, and we've been trying on the show as much as possible every day to give you guys something to do. And I know that sometimes it's just overwhelming. It's like, I've got all these things to do. And then when you want to do something, it's like, well, where was that thing that Shannon talked about? And we're constantly looking for ways to be able to give you guys information and not bombard you with emails and such. So we've always had a Pinterest page on Autism Live, and I myself curate and put things on the Pinterest page, and I put them in different categories. And what I did over the weekend was I started making categories. And so if you go to Pinterest, and if you've never been on Pinterest before, you know, you're welcome, because it's you're going to fall down a rabbit hole, because it's everything that you ever wanted, because you just have to search for it and you'll find everything you ever wanted. I think it's better than the internet. But don't get me started talking about Pinterest. But find Autism Live. We have our own Pinterest page on Autism Live, and you'll see the boards that I've created in there. And there's things that are just like crossing the midline and things like that. But I've specifically started curating boards that say at home. So then it'll say at home, and then it'll say visual schedules. And I tried to put in like, you know, as many examples of visual schedules as I know you guys ask for. Like, how would I make a visual schedule for somebody who's nonverbal? Well, there's several in there. How would I make a visual schedule for somebody who is a teenager or an adult? How do I make a visual schedule for myself? How do I make a magnetic one? So there are a bunch of them in there. And I know none of us wants to do this project, but I can tell you for myself and for my child, when you do a visual schedule, there's something about it that our kids see and go, okay, I'm gonna get, and you make it, if you have to, if they don't read yet, you put pictures, but if they are reading, you put text. But there's something about being able to see, I'm going to get to have screen time later on, that allows you to say, this time is time when we just, you know, do physical stuff. And I had this lesson brought home the other day because I'm having this problem myself, right? Where my kid is wanting to be on screen time all of the time. And some of the time he has to be because of his school, right? And he has passions that, you know, he's creating video games and he's editing video. And so I want him to have that screen time for those things, right? And he's doing his SAT prep on Khan Academy, right? He's doing all those things. I don't want to take that time away, but you know, I need for him to still be interactive. I don't want to lose all the things that we've worked so hard on. And the other day we worked our way gently up to that we watched a movie with him, and it wasn't even a movie that I thought he was necessarily going to enjoy. And afterwards, I said this yesterday on the show. I said to him, you know what, this was so nice. I so enjoyed spending this time with you. And my kid, who is fully verbal now, said to me, oh, Mom, thank you so much for saying that. And my husband and I both learned through that, you know, as much as he enjoys that screen time, we have to be feeding the other stuff. As much as they mew about it and say, I don't want to, in whatever way they're capable of saying it, we have to be working to have that interactive time with them because it's good for their self-esteem. But check us out on Pinterest. And there are other things on there. I put 5 days worth of at-homes in there to talk about this week. But start with the visual schedule, because I think that's really, you talk about that all the time, right, Dr. Grampiche, the visual schedule?
Oh yeah, the scheduling right now, I mean, this whole thing that I keep talking about, routine is like, I think it just saves us right now. Like, honestly, and the visual schedule is a huge part of that. Early this morning, I was on a walk with my family, which we do now every day. And these routines, we were just talking about that, these routines of like, just everyone has a specific set of activities throughout the day is truly what makes us get through this period of time right now.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so somebody has written in and said they need help for the login for iBehavioral training challenges. I just want to point out, because some people are watching who are card parents. So I just want to point out that if you are a card parent, you were given a special login to a special part of iBehavioral training that is different and separate. You will not find those new trainings there. If you are a card parent and you have not found your way to log into that special card thing, send an email to me, s.penrod@autism-live.com. We'll get you straightened out for that. That's special stuff just for you. But for everyone, card parents and everyone in the world, if you just go to ibehavioraltraining.com, they have a place for you to click on there to find those new trainings that are every day for things to do right now. And that's for everyone. But if you're a card parent, it can be confusing. You don't want to log in the way that you normally do. Also, somebody wrote in and said that yesterday in one of the different places that we were on, Dr. Grampiche, and I don't remember whether it was Autism Live or the private thing, that you were talking to a mom about that, you might even want to introduce some new toys to get them to be reinforcing. For some reason, I think that was the private one. She wants to know, what if you introduce everything and its mother, but it still returns to and I love that, the non-age appropriate toy. And can I tell you that somebody after the webinar said, I wished you had asked, what is the toy that you want them to play with, and what is the toy that they want to play with? That would have helped us. And I was like, that didn't even occur to me. But somebody said they wanted to know that. And can we talk a little bit about that? Because she specifies the non-age appropriate toys. Because I know that there are so many of you that are out there that your kids are playing, your 15-year-old's playing with Thomas the Tank. And, your 18-year-old daughter is playing with her Bratz doll. And that's a very emotional thing for a lot of people. But in this emergency, Dr. Grampiche, what's your advice about playing with non-appropriate, age-appropriate toys?
Well, I have a lot of comments about that. So
I'm sure you do.
In this emergency, I think it's one of those things that we just be lenient about. That's number one. But the second thing is, and more importantly, when you talk about age-appropriate toys, I think there's two things I want to say. One is sometimes we look at it's a personal thing. Like if, as Shannon said, if your 18-year-old is playing with Thomas the Tank, everything else that they're doing, is it age appropriate? Or is everything else also at a younger functioning level? Because if everything else they're doing is pretty close to age appropriate, then I can understand that you would want them to change and maybe start doing what 18-year-olds do in their recreational time. Otherwise, it's just makes sense, right? If their functioning level is a younger age, then that also applies to their choice of recreation, which is how they want to entertain themselves. Now, that issue aside, I just also want to point out that what you should be also doing, it's not about the toy so much as it is about what the child gets out of it. So if someone is entertaining themselves with, let's say, Thomas the Tank, maybe it's all about trains. And maybe it's not really about trains, but it's something about the routine of trains or the sound of trains, or I don't know, some feature of that you could take and then develop a similar type of toy or activity or whatever it is, but that is a little bit higher in age level. So for instance, maybe that person would now be interested in reading about trains as opposed to playing with Thomas the Tank. Or maybe they want to look at documentaries about trains. I don't know, but our interests are based on specific things, and they're not necessarily, it's not about the toy. Although in our field, honestly, with our kids, it could also be that he or she's just interested in the music that comes from the toy, the color of the toy, the sound of the toy, whatever it is. Find out what it is about. Sometimes we think of something as being appropriate or not appropriate, and then we want to eliminate the things that we classified as not appropriate. Let's find out what it is about that preferred toy that is so engaging for the child, and let's see if we can take that aspect and make it something that's maybe more socially appropriate.
That is like reason 3054 why I love Dr. Doreen Grampiche, because there are a lot of ABA people out there, I think, that push this idea of, everything has to be age appropriate. And let's face it, your mother-in-law pushes that. Why is he 18 and he's playing with a Thomas the Tank Engine? And it becomes an indictment of you as a parent. But I just want to point out, do you know who Mandy Patinkin is? Mandy Patinkin is a world famous actor. He played Che Guevara on Broadway in what's the Evita. I couldn't think of it for a second. And then he's had a brilliant film and television career. And do you know what he does with all of his waking spare time? He has a train track thing. He has a whole room in a building that he built near his house where he has trains and he builds and adds on to it. And he's just one of a million people. Those hobby model places wouldn't exist if it was only 8-year-olds who loved that kind of stuff. Now, but it's exactly what Dr. Grampiche is saying, is that he's capable of balancing his checkbook. He's capable of doing his job. He's capable of doing all those other things, but his passion, his hobby, the thing he spends all of his free time on is those trains. And you know, I don't know what his mother's mother-in-law was saying, but at a certain point, everybody shut up. So I think, you know, building that interest, you know, this is why we love her. Dr. Grant-Pichet tells us about keeping it reasonable and keeping it specific to the individual and allowing them to be who they are, but the very highest them that they can be. So that it doesn't prevent them from having a conversation with someone, but we get to stay, you know, true to their passion, which is trains. And can I just say that there was a mom years ago when we started Autism Live who would write into us about the fact that her son, the only thing he found reinforcing was The Lion King. And that was it. That's the only reinforcer she had. And he was all about the video Lion King. And I remember way back when Dr. Grant-Pichet saying, well, let's expand on the Lion King. Let's get the stuffed animal, because this was a little kid, and let's get the book. And then it transferred. So then it was all of a sudden he loved his Lion King book. Well, now we had 2 reinforcers. And then from there, they built in, and eventually were able to add, you know, the little plastic animals that you can get. So he started being interested in things that were jungle. So after a period of time, this kid had a bunch of things that reinforced him and that helped him with everything. So it does work, and it can. And you were right on the money. She said that trains was the thing. And she said functioning is age appropriate, but social is lower. And so, you know, but there are lots of things about trains that are social. Go ahead, Dr. Grant-Pichet.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to exactly what you were talking about, since it happens to be trains. There's, you know, just, it's so funny, Shannon, because years ago, I remember talking to a lot of my parents. We're talking like maybe 30 years ago. And a lot of the parents would say to me, like, he's so interested in just like building things and, you know, like making machines and so on and so forth. And I was like, that's not a bad thing. Like, you know, there's a lot of, there's room for that, right? And then before you know it, years go by and we have robotics teams in elementary school. So let me tell you, you can look around and you will find hobby classes or groups of kids getting together doing train type things. And that would be completely a way for him to enter a social environment and be able to deal with that. The key to it is not necessarily changing the item. It's, first of all, finding other people who have the same interest. And secondly, making sure that the person, that your child doesn't do 100% of their time focused on that. And that's true for all of us. I mean, you know, you look at any person who has a passion about anything, everybody has the tendency to just want to do that one thing that they're very passionate about. And we force ourselves to do all the other things that we have to do, and then reward ourselves with that particular reinforcer. So I think for all of our kids, it's a matter of just teaching them over time that they can engage in the things that bring them joy, but only as a reward, and that there are other things in life that they need to accomplish in order to gain access to that.
Wonderful. We've got a very special guest who's watching the show right now, and I want to give a very special shout out to Griffin. I see Griffin, and Griffin, can you come over here and give me a high five, Griffin? Dude, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you're here, Griffin. And I want to say that I see Alyssa as well, and I see, who else do I see here? I see a bunch of people, and I can't get my thing to move now. There we go. I see Cassidy. Cassidy, I haven't seen you in a while, and I've been busy, but I'm going to get through to you. And Leanne, I want to say hi to you. And I want to go back to a question that we had. I have a 20-month-old that has already tested high risk for autism on the MChat. I'm on a wait list for the developmental pediatric specialist, but I'm wanting a full eval, a diagnosis ASAP for him to have access to resources. What's the best way to go about that?
Sorry, I think it depends on what state you're in right now. If you have 20 months, I mean, anyone who's a diagnostician or a psychologist should be able to diagnose by observation at this point, and you have the MCHAT results as well for screening. So it depends on where you are. There are still wait lists for some states. I would recommend that you just get in touch with your pediatrician and ask for a referral to get a diagnosis as soon as possible. You know, an MCHAT will speed things up. And a lot of people are doing diagnosis right now via Zoom. So that is also possible to do.
Okay. And if you need to reach out to me specifically, s.penrod@autism-live.com. And Cassidy, I am sorry, I've been busier than, as my mother would have said, busier than a one-armed paper hanger. But Cassidy has been watching the show from the beginning of time, and Cassidy has her own show now. And I want to be on Cassidy's show, and Cassidy, we want to have you on here. So I promise, I will get back to you. Okay, and Kathy, I see Kathy. I want to say that, and I see Anna Marie. Question. I have a 33-year-old that is working at Ralph's. Oh my gosh. Essential worker, right? Any suggestions how I can discuss COVID virus safety? Today, I finally got him to wear a mask at work. He is very unaware of boundaries and space. What a hero, because he's going to work, and what a hero you are, Mom, that you're having that happen and wanting him to be as safe as possible. So Doreen, what can we do? Dr. Granpeesheh, what can we do to help this young man to stay safe at Ralph's? And for those of you who don't know, Ralph's is a grocery store here in California.
What a wonderful question, and how lovely. That's terrific. It so happens that at my Ralph's down the street, there's also a young man who is on the spectrum, and he works there, and I see him often. I think you just need to kind of list the things that you would like to be taught, you know, in terms of safety. Safety is a very abstract concept. It comes with things like, you know, the whole concept of safety is very difficult to teach. I wouldn't necessarily want to work on that. I would just outline the things that, the behaviors that you would want him to exercise. So for example, you need to wear a mask, rules, right? So you need to wear a mask. You need to maybe wear gloves. You need to stand 6 feet apart from others. You need to wash your hands every 30 minutes. So those would be like 4 really good rules. And I'm not sure that I would go too much into trying to like explain all of it. One of the things that we do with our very, very high functioning adults is to draw comic strips of people and to explain. I mean, with COVID-19, we've developed a lot of different instructional, I guess, protocols for teaching our kids or telling our kids what this is. It's a double-edged sword, so be careful, because you want to make sure they understand, but you also want to make sure they don't you don't cause a massive amount of anxiety. So the best we found for our adults is to compare it to, let's say, just a regular cold or a virus, and teach them that it is very important to not give it to other people, because then other people will get sick and unhappy. And that's as far as we go for the reasoning. But we do practice a lot of the behavior. And I think that's what you need to do, is practice the behavior and reward the behavior. Oftentimes we get very involved in trying to explain the reason to our kids, and that's not really what it's about. It's a lot of times it's just, this is the rule. Just like when you go to work, you clock in. Now, when you go to work, you have to put a mask on. That's a rule. The governor told us we have to do this. And you also have to wash your, so like just the behaviors, you know. And when he comes home, when he leaves, give him a small checklist, like on a very small piece of paper, and ask him to put his initials next to each item when he does it. He can put that in his pocket, and he can have that with him all day long. And when he comes home, he can show it to you. And if he has done those things when he was supposed to do them, then you need to give him a very significant reward for having done a fantastic routine during the course of the day. So really, that's the kind of thing that I would focus on right now. It's a very difficult and abstract concept to be trying to teach people about safety right now.
Yeah. Okay, Amani says, I always learn so much watching this show. Thank you, Amani. I learned so much being here, let me just say. Okay, so Bonnie wanted to know, what are the signs of intellectual disability in an autistic kid? My son is 6 and he is functionally verbal, but he has not been tested for his IQ yet. Is there an intelligent test for a kid like him?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sorry, Shannon, did they say he is verbal or not?
They said that he's functionally verbal.
Functionally verbal. Yeah, so there's 2 options. At 6, you're right on the cusp of a WIPSI and a WISC, which is the same IQ test. It's the Wechsler test of intelligence, but it is verbal. It does give a lot of verbal information and instructions. So if his verbal ability is limited, it will pull down his score. So another way to test intelligence is through nonverbal tests of intelligence, which are designed for hearing impaired individuals. So I would recommend one of those. There's the Merrill-Palmer or the LITER, L-E-I-T-E-R, the LITER 2. They're very, very good tests. And that's how you will measure raw intelligence aside from language.
But, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Dr. Granpeesheh, one of the things that I was taught once my son was diagnosed, because I was always taught that IQ tests were rigid, that you got tested and that's what your score was and that's what it would be your entire life. That is not what we saw in our son. That it changed vastly after he had ABA. Is that a thing?
That's right. So IQ is malleable. In fact, we've written many articles about the fact that IQ changes. All IQ is mental age divided by chronological age times 100. So, if your mental age, the way that you in comparison to all your peers, what you're doing is about the same as your regular own age, then your IQ is going to be 100 because it'll be 1 times 100. Normal IQ is 100. But the more your mental age increases, so the more you learn through anything, through ABA, through school, through whatever, the more you learn. And if you're learning more than your peers, then obviously your IQ score will increase. So when our kids are first tested, they're testing around, 60 or 70 IQ because their mental age, they're functioning, let's say like a 3-year-old, but they're actually 5 years old, right? So it's 3 divided by 5 times 100. And then that shows a low IQ. But as they catch up to their own age group, as they learn through ABA and they master all the things that other 5-year-olds are doing, then their IQ starts to approach 100, which is normal IQ. So IQ on its own is not that interesting when you're very young. It starts to become more interesting or I guess prescriptive when you're a little bit older, because it only indicates that it's going to be very, very hard for you to learn certain things. But having that aside, it's not a big, I always tell parents, IQ, diagnosis, all of these things, they change. It all changes. So even if you get a diagnosis today, don't be worried or scared because everything that you're doing, especially if you're doing a lot of ABA and other interventions, the whole concept, the whole process of doing all of this is in order to change IQ, in order to change social behavior, in order to change the diagnosis. So it's not a life sentence by any means.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. We're saying hi to Human, and Human says, my son is autistic and he's 3 years old. He's not bothered with loud music or sounds. In fact, he loves loud music and he loves to dance to it. Should I assume that he will not develop a sensitivity to loud noise as he grows up? Or is there a possibility that as he grows up, he will, and it's being difficult for me, he will be intolerant to the loud sound?
So that's a great question. And no, so our children are not intolerant to the same stuff. So if he likes loud music and loud sounds, first of all, I would want to make sure that you've checked his hearing. So let's make sure that his hearing is normal, because otherwise, let's just make sure of that. So that aside, as he grows up, he most likely will not become sensitive to loud music or the sounds that he's enjoying right now. He may become sensitive to other sounds that you have not necessarily experienced yet. For instance, the sound that a fluorescent light bulb makes, which many of us don't hear, but your child might hear and it might bother him or her. Or let's say he might become sensitive to the sound of an airplane outside, which you and I might not hear at all until it's right above us, and our kids can hear that. So the frequencies of sounds are different. Sometimes our children have insensitivity to certain things, so they require it to be louder, but they have hypersensitivity to other decibels, which they just can't tolerate because it's so shrill. So that's kind of how it progresses. And sometimes our kids have no sensitivity to sound. So it's entirely possible also that your child will have typical sensitivities to the various sounds as well. We'll just have to wait and see.
Okay, this is probably going to be our last question. I apologize. You guys are writing in fast and furious, and we'll try to answer them as much as we can online. But the next question is, my 3-year-old son is saying one word and reading. How long does it take for him to communicate effectively or saying more than one word?
It doesn't say what age the child is.
3. They're 3 years old.
Oh, just be patient. It's really good if he's saying one words and reading, and all of that is fantastic stuff. And depending on the hours of work that you do, it could be faster or slower. If you do nothing at all, I can't predict which direction it'll take. If you do a lot of therapy, which right now your child is at the age where honestly the recommendation is 40 hours a week of 1-to-1 ABA therapy. If you really do that for a couple of years, then things can progress very, very rapidly. Is there another comment, Shannon?
There's all kinds of comments here. And I just want to say that, people have said they're so excited to use the electric toothbrush for oral motor. The mom with the son who's working at the Ralphs has said how deeply appreciative she is. She says, I like the checklist. He does well with those. He does have a routine when he gets in the car at home. And she said, thank you so much. He's been working there since he was 20. I'm reading a comment from somebody who has identified themselves as being on the spectrum and that they run a wildland fire suppression business. But they have a lot of health concerns. They're listing a tracheostomy, a G-tube, and 47XYY syndrome. Anything possible if you try hard. And thank you for that, because we all agree with that. 8 months out of the year, when not in fire season, I attend an adult autistic day program and do maintenance on the 21 group homes we own. What an inspiration you are. 1 day a week, I do a day program only. Dreams do come true if you work hard. I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge that wonderful person and to say what an inspiration they are. Thank you so much, you guys. And I apologize for the comments that we didn't have a chance to get to, but we're going to continue to be here. And we are back this afternoon in just a few hours. And if you haven't watched one of these episodes, it's so hard for me not to cry through the whole thing. I'm so inspired by the people who want to help our kids. And if you need to put that in your bucket today, because you just feel like maybe you're alone and you're feeling like nobody cares about you, tune in for this hour and you will see that there are people that you don't even know who love your kid and care about you and want to make sure that everybody's getting what they need. Don't you think, Dr. Grampiche, it's so inspirational?
Absolutely, very much so.
Real live heroes. So we will be back with that. I want to tease out a couple of things though for you. Tomorrow on Autism Live, Bonnie Yates is here and we're going to take the whole hour with her because so many of you have written to us about your fears about school and about what's happening now and what will happen this summer and what will happen in the fall and your kids getting behind. Bonnie is a special education attorney. She has got some answers for us and some calls to action because there's some very interesting things happening right now. One of the things that was in the stimulus package was that the right to decide what the schools were going to do was given to Betsy DeVos, our head of education, our secretary of education, and she had 30 days to decide. We're being asked by a lot of our special ed attorney friends to let them know, because they're talking about a voucher system for our special ed. You're going to want to tune into this hour tomorrow to hear what's going on. And then on Friday, oh my gosh, and I know that this is exciting to Dr. Granpeesheh too, we are going to have Julie Matthews from Nourishing Hope here talking about the nutrition that we put into our kids specifically during this COVID time. And she says she's got 3 things that she can tell us that are going to help us to help our kids to be healthier during this emergency. I can't wait to hear what that is. And I know, Dr. Granpeesheh, that you have done a lot of work with Julie over the years, and that's a pretty exciting thing for you as well. So anything you want to say about that?
No, I love both of those folks, and I'm really glad you have them on the show. I'm going to try and join.
And every day, thank you. That would be great. We would, because anytime we have you, that's like sun, moon, stars, right? And we are going to continue to have that afternoon show the rest of this week. It's just a very special week here on Autism Live. So at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 5 o'clock Eastern time, we're back here with Card Heroes. I guarantee if you can get through it and not get misty or emotional, I don't know what to say, because I can't. They have to practically hose me down afterwards, and they're delightful. So tune in, be a part of the Love Fest. We're over time now, but thank you so much for being here. Dr. Granpeesheh, thank you so much. I learned so much every time.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you. But we'll be back at 2 o'clock. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Ugh.